Hello, snowboarders of the internet. I am your host, Kevin Hub, here to talk about my top 5 Freeride boards. I apologize that Avran couldn't be here. AMI decided to hire him to fire everybody at Transworld in person with Zima. I don't know how they found out about the Zima part, but you know. Number 5, we're getting going with the Rome Blur. Now, this isn't on a lot of people's list, and for a lot of people this might fall, honestly, a little bit more towards the all-mountain side, but for me, it fits perfectly into that Freeride board, and it just kind of has that characteristic to it where it just kind of takes care of you. It's not an aggressive, gnarly deck that you've really got to be on top of at all times, and that was just because I could trust the board to do what it needed to do, and it was stable, it was damp, it had some power to it, but it wasn't too much power that I had to really put a lot of effort into it. Number 4 comes from the brand Yes, and it is the Pick Your Line. This has a lot of really cool stuff going on with it. It's tapered, it has their fancy side cut to it, it's got a bigger nose, shorter tail, it's got all that fun stuff that makes a Freeride board. Camber between the feet, rocker nose and tail. The big story with this though is definitely the side cut. It is what Yes calls the tapered underbite. And the whole concept of that is sometimes, depending on the way things are designed, a tapered board can have a little bit of what basically is called tapered washout. Then essentially what you're dealing with that taper is the side cut's not really finishing through the tail, and it's almost like a piece of the board's just gone back there. So it doesn't have sometimes as much grip as something that does have that full finished side cut back there without that taper. So by using the underbite, and basically it's just a step in on the side cut, it steps in at each foot, to get that taper, it's not losing that side cut really, it's just basically making the board narrower but keeping that same side cut profile. So the side cut does this essentially finish at the contact points on your tail. And it really does work. It doesn't feel strange. It feels a little odd going switch, but it's a full tapered directional board. It's gonna feel a weird switch regardless. And that tapered underbite side cut just worked really, really well. It feels like a balanced side cut board. It doesn't really feel like a tapered board until you get into deep snow, and then it totally floats like one. So the side cut is really what lands this guy at that spot for me. Number 3 is the only board on this list that is rocker dominant, and that is the Libtech TRS Gold Member. But the Gold Member is really, really good. And what really solidified and cemented this board on this list for me was when I was riding it, it was towards the end of a really big test day where I was riding a ton of stuff, and this was really the first or second year that I had kind of shifted more towards riding stiffer boards, so that was all I'd been riding the entire day. And I go to lay down a really heavy heel side carve, chunk out a little bit because I'm completely exhausted at this point, and just kind of lean back onto the tail, and the tail of this board just completely saved me. I had no issues holding on to that turn. It kept me going through the turn nice and smooth, no issues whatsoever, and that was kind of that click moment of, oh damn, this is a really good Freeride board, where it just has that type of tail to it that it's not overbearing. I can still get into that tail and pop it, but when you really need to lean into it and trust that tail to take care of you, you can. So the side cut, it's mag, it's gonna hold an edge, it's gonna hold an edge on crap and crud and terrible snow and ice and hard and whatnot. It has C2, so it floats really well, it turns really quick, it's still decent in the trees, and that tail is just super supportive and really stable. Number 2 on my list goes to a brand that we've recently started reviewing here at the Angry Snowboarder, and that is the Ecker Ultralight. This board is pretty dang incredible. It's also pretty up there in price, but with the construction that they're putting on this thing, that price is justified. And I have never had such an easier time literally being above the ground in the air in between my carbs. The amount of snap and energy that you get out of the turns on the Ultralight is insane. And it's also the type of board that I don't really think has a speed limit. You take this thing and you go fast, and you can just keep going faster. It's super stable, it loves speed, it carves really well, it's got okay snap to it realistically. It's a Freeride board, and to be honest, I don't really find that most Freeride boards have a ton of just boost to the moon type of pop to them. It's not really what they're built for, they're just built for stability and power, which is what this board has. And really, I just can't speak enough about that side cut and just those high speed turns and just how much energy you get out of those turns. It's like you don't lose anything. Honorable mentions. These guys didn't quite make the list, but stuff that I still feel like is worth mentioning. First one I'm going to mention is the DC Super Nate. The next is going to be the Ride Timeless. And the last one is the Ride Mountain Pig. Number one, you made it. You stayed around, and now you get to hear my number one Freeride board. And from me, that is the Weston Big Chief. This board almost put me on my ass, actually, the first time I went out and rode it. So I'm thinking Freeride board from a Colorado company. I've ridden kind of that stuff here and there. And so I go to lay out, super hard toe side turn real quick, not expecting the side cut to be what it was. And it responded so quick and turned so tight when I laid my entire body weight into it that it almost bucked me backwards on my ass. Luckily it didn't, and I didn't die, but after that it was just smiles. Like, this is the type of board that I just could not stop smiling on. It's stable, it's got a lot of power to it, the side cut is absolutely fantastic, and definitely in those steeper, more aggressive situations where you really need to trust your board, you need to be able to turn quick, you need to be able to point it straight even. Like, this is the number one board that kind of comes to my mind when I'm thinking about that type of terrain. I think it's probably my perfect Freeride board. If I was going to go and design one, it would feel very, very similar. This has been my top 5 Freeride boards. What did you think? Did your board not make the list? Did it make the list? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let's have a conversation in the comments. While you're doing that, make sure you've clicked the subscribe button if you're new around here, and make sure you hit the bell so you get notifications when we've got more videos coming out. If you really want to support us, the best way to do that is to head over to Angry Snowboarder VIP and figure out some level that works for you and basically send us some money. It's definitely the best way to support us, keep these projects going, and progress with new projects. I've been your host, Kevin. Check out the rest of my videos. I still don't know where Avran is.